Have you ever felt like you were screaming inside, and no one was listening? As if your words had become invisible, as if your presence was something others only notice when you disappear? Sometimes silence speaks louder than 1,000 explanations, and absence becomes the most brutal and most honest language the soul can use. Rumi said, "When you walk away, the soul begins to hear what you have kept silent for so long." There is something deeply spiritual about this movement of retreat. It is in the void we leave that the other person often finally understands who we were. It is in absence that the truth, previously ignored, reveals itself clearly. You can be there, trying, insisting, giving yourself, putting the heart into words, into gestures, into silences filled with love. But none of this seems enough. You feel like you speak and are not heard, that you love and are not felt. That is present, but no one really sees you. How many times have you tried to explain your pain? How many times have you begged to be seen, understood, respected, but your words hit invisible walls, and then you started to fall silent, not out of weakness, but out of exhaustion? And this is where everything starts to change, because silence, when born from a wounded soul, is not giving up. It is a scream that doesn't need sound, nor a stage, a scream that only the attentive can hear. Your absence has a power that no words have. It effortlessly shows what you meant. It reveals, like a brutal mirror, the space you occupied. Absence is the sacred language of the tired soul. We often insist where there is no fertile soil. We continue trying to be light in environments that only know how to turn off. But there comes a time when leaving isn't abandonment. It's healing. It's spiritual. It's divine. And perhaps it is precisely in this distancing, in this choice to disappear, that you will finally be heard. Not through the ears, but through the absence that echoes in the other's heart. Because when you're there all the time, your presence becomes a habit. But when you withdraw, your absence becomes a mirror. Rumi did not speak of departures out of pride. He spoke of absences that heal, of silences that liberate, of sacred spaces where the soul can finally recognize itself. And I ask you, have you ever withdrawn from a place, someone, a situation, and realized that only then things started to make sense? Have you ever noticed how some people only realize their worth when they no longer have access to their energy? As if what you've been trying to say for years was understood the second you decided to leave? Absence is not punishment. She is a portal. It is a spiritual key that opens the vision of those who were blinded by routine, ego, and distraction. If you feel like you're always explaining, always justifying, always trying to prove your worth, perhaps you're trying to be understood by those who don't speak the language of the awakened soul. And in this case, the greatest act of self-love is not to speak louder. It is to retire with dignity. The soul does not beg. The soul does not beg. The soul, silence. And when she is silent, she transforms. Your absence could be the awakening the other person so desperately needed. But above all, your absence could be the awakening that you deserved so much. Now, breathe, sit down, and he asks himself, "Who are you?" without the need to be understood. The answer may not come in words, but she will scream in the silence that follows. Have you ever been to this place, to give everything, and still feel like it's not enough? Of trying to talk, resolve, stay, until you realize that it's not presence that heals, but the courage to leave when no one listens to your soul anymore? If this is touching something inside you, if any sentence so far seems to have been written with the words you've never been able to say, so right here in the comments, "My absence will say what my pain could never explain." I want to know if you've experienced this. If this video is telling you something you've needed to hear for a long time, and leave yours like, not just for me, but as a silent sign that this resonated with you. Your like helps this video reach more souls who are also tired of talking and ready to find themselves in silence. If you feel like you belong in this kind of conversation, where spirituality, pain, and healing meet, subscribe to the channel, because this is just the beginning. In the next moment, we'll dive deeper. Now that the silence has begun to speak, it's time to understand the pain you never named. Have you ever felt present in someone's life, but invisible within their heart, as if you were there all the time, offering everything you have, every word, every silence, every gesture, yet it was as if you didn't truly exist? It's like living next to someone who never truly looks at you. You smile, chat, adapt, try to please, but deep down you know you're only being tolerated, not welcomed, as if your essence were invisible, as if what you feel never has real room to breathe. It's a kind of pain that doesn't scream, but gnaws silently, because it doesn't come from something violent. It comes from nothing, from emptiness, from the gaze that doesn't find you, from the answer that never arrives, from the constant feeling of trying to connect with someone who doesn't want or know how to connect with you. And it drains you. It empties you. It makes you wonder if the problem is you, if you're asking too much, feeling too much, expecting too much. But is that really true? Or are you just tired of offering presence to someone who only offers you emotional absence? Could it be that, deep down, your soul is screaming for something you don't have the courage to admit? Maybe the pain isn't just from rejection, but from internal abandonment, from ignoring yourself, erasing yourself, molding yourself to fit into a place where you've never truly been seen. It's easy to say you're needy. What's harder is understanding that what you feel isn't neediness, it's the pain of not being fully perceived, of being half, of being with someone and still feeling alone. And that's no small thing. This is devastating. You may be experiencing exactly that right now. You may be in a relationship where everything seems right on the outside, but on the inside, everything is in ruins. You feel like you're there, but soulless, lacking sparkle, as if you're just surviving emotionally. And maybe you don't even know how this erasure began. You only know that today you speak, and no one listens, that you cry, but in silence, that you love, but feel no return, and it breaks you, because no one taught you to leave a place without screaming. No one taught you that absence is sometimes more dignified than persistence. No one told you that withdrawing isn't a failure, that walking away can be the first step to healing. But how do you walk away when there's still feeling? How do you leave when your heart still insists? Maybe the biggest problem isn't the other person. Maybe the problem lies in how much you've let yourself get lost trying to be seen. You nullified yourself. You reduced yourself. You shrank to fit into spaces too tight for your soul. And now here you are, wondering why it hurts so much. But pain is just the symptom. The emptiness you feel is a reflection of how much you have given your presence to those who do not know its value. And the worst part is that, over time, you start to believe it's normal, that relationships are just like this, that feeling this absence within a presence is part of the package, but it isn't. You deserve more than this. You deserve a love that sees you, that listens to you without you having to explain yourself. You deserve someone who recognizes your soul even in silence. Someone who notices when something is wrong, even without you saying it. But this only begins to happen when you, first and foremost, recognize yourself. When you stop begging for emotional crumbs. When you choose to return to yourself before trying to be accepted by someone who doesn't even see you. The invisible problem is this silent cycle of abandonment that you keep repeating. You give, you offer, you insist, but you never receive in the same measure. And deep down, you know it. He just doesn't want to accept it, because acceptance requires change, and change requires courage. But listen to me, there is no cure without courage, and there is no courage without pain. Your soul is trying to show you something you've been avoiding looking at, maybe out of fear, maybe out of habit. But now you're here, listening to me, and something inside you already knows that you can't stay in the same place anymore. This video is saying what you've always felt but never had the words to name. It's touching the silent wound you've been carrying for too long. And it's okay to feel. It's okay to be moved. It's okay to recognize yourself here. If this spoke to your soul, comment below. I refuse to be invisible where my soul wants to be seen. This phrase could be the first step in your awakening. And I really want to know if it resonated with you. Have you ever wondered why you stay so long in places where you don't feel seen, heard, or recognized? Why do you keep trying, explaining, and molding yourself, even when everything inside you screams for freedom? Maybe it's not just fear of loneliness. Maybe it's fear of facing a deeper truth, that you've grown accustomed to pain, as if it were part of who you are, as if you deserved less, as if the absence of love were the price of existence. Rumi wrote, "You were born with wings, why do you prefer to crawl through life?" And this sentence, when looked at deeply, is both a wound and a revelation. Because yes, you were born with wings, with a living soul, with brightness, with light. But throughout your life, in the name of love, you have been cutting those wings. He was hiding parts of himself so as not to bother anyone. He was diminishing his dreams, his sensitivity, his intensity, so as not to be rejected. And in silence, he learned to crawl, dragging yourself through relationships where you were only loved when it was convenient, accepting emotional crumbs as if they were banquets, believing that your presence should be silent to be accepted. But there's something nobody told you, something that is not on the surface but lives deep down, like an invisible poison. You don't stay in places where you are not valued because you like it. You stay because you unconsciously believe you need to do so to prove your worth. You confuse pain with love, absence with proof, and he tries to win affection where it never existed, thinking that if he succeeds, he will finally be worthy. This is the spiritual root of your repetition, the hidden cycle that makes you return to the same places, the same types of people, the same relationships, hoping that this time it will be different. But the soul is not deceived. She knows. She feels. She screams silently every time you betray yourself trying to be loved. And here's the hardest truth of all. As long as you try to prove that you deserve love, you will continue to attract people who put you to the test. Because what is at stake is not the other person's love. It's love for yourself. It's how you see yourself when you're alone. It's how much you believe you have value, even when no one is looking. It's your soul, trying to remember who you were before you believed you needed to hide to be accepted. Rumi also said, "The wound is the place where the light enters you." But for that to happen, you need to look at that wound. No fear, no distraction, no more excuses. You need to recognize that what hurts you today didn't start today. It started way back when you learned that you needed to earn attention, when he learned that presence was currency. That love was something that was earned with effort, not something that was received lightly. This is the invisible prison that many live in, to seek in current relationships the cure for an old pain, waiting for someone from the outside to repair what is broken inside. But this expectation, however understandable, only prolongs the suffering, because what you expect others to do for you is exactly what you need to learn to do for yourself. See yourself. If you listen, be validated. If you choose. And it's not easy, not even, because it requires you to stop running away. It requires you to face your own abandonment. Stop always blaming others and look within, with courage, with honesty, with compassion. You don't suffer because the other person doesn't love you. You suffer because your soul still believes it needs to convince the other person to love you. And in that effort, you lose yourself. Disconnect from your essence. Disconnect from your light. But there is a way out, and it starts when you stop crawling, when you understand that the pain of being invisible is less than the pain of continuing to betray yourself, when you accept that it's better to be alone than badly accompanied by your own absence, when you decide that your soul will no longer beg for what it naturally deserves. And you can start now, not with big changes, but with small choices, choices to treat yourself with more respect, of not remaining silent in the face of disrespect, of not blaming yourself for feeling too much, of not shrinking to fit in. It's a process, a journey, and every word you've heard so far is an invitation, a reminder that you were born to fly, even if they made you forget about it. And if this video is awakening something inside you, then write it here in the comments. I choose my wings, not because you're ready, but because you're tired of crawling where your soul wants to fly. What no one tells you is that sometimes the only way to be heard is to walk away. It sounds radical, it sounds cruel, it even sounds selfish, but it's not. It's emotional survival. It's silent healing. It's the soul saying enough when the heart has already screamed in every way and gone unheard. Because there's an invisible limit that once crossed no longer allows us to continue. Not with the same look, not with the same dedication, not with the same brilliance. There's a point where silence becomes the only honest response, where absence becomes a message, where leaving the scene is the only way to finally be noticed. You've tried everything. You've been kind when the other person was indifferent. You've been patient when your soul wanted to run. You've tried to explain your pain, your doubts, your fears. You've cried in secret, hoping someone would notice without you having to say it. You've stayed when everything inside you told you to leave. And in the end, nothing changed. Or worse, you lost yourself in the process. You lost yourself trying to prove that you deserved to stay, that you were worth choosing, that your love was valuable. But listen carefully. What you call love might just be fear. Fear of being forgotten, fear of becoming irrelevant, fear of drifting away and never being sought out again. But do you know what's more painful than that? It's remaining present where you're not felt. It's making yourself available to those who only access you when they need you. It's expecting recognition from those who only recognize you as an emotional resource, never as a soul. And at that very point, the hidden key appears. The one few have the courage to use. The key that liberates but also requires you to free yourself from illusions. The key that doesn't open doors for others. It opens doors for you, for your healing, for your reconstruction, for your rebirth. This key has a name: conscious absence. It's when you understand that your departure says more than your stay. It's when you stop insisting and start honoring yourself. It's when you choose silence as your answer, not because you gave up, but because you loved yourself enough to stop begging. Because begging for affection is suicide for the soul. And you didn't come here to die inside trying to be seen on the outside. You came to be light, to expand, to grow in love, in presence, in truth. And sometimes growing up hurts. Growing up is growing apart. Growing up is understanding that some connections aren't reciprocal and never will be. Not your fault, but because not everyone is ready to see you at the level your soul has already reached. Rumi said, "When you let go of attachments, everything changes, but no one prepares you for the emptiness that comes after. The silence, the open space where there was once an emotional routine, even if painful. This space is scary at first, but it is in it that the new can be born. It is in this emptiness that healing finds a home. Because yes, your absence can echo louder than any speech. It says, without words, everything you tried to say. It shows how much of a difference you made. It exposes the cruelest truth. Those who only recognize your value when you're gone never truly saw you while you were there. And that changes everything. Because it frees you from illusion, frees you from blind hope. It frees you from the constant attempt to prove that you are worthy of love. You are already worthy. It always was. I was just trying to remember. This key is not in someone else's hands. It's in yours. You choose when to continue. You choose when to stop. You choose when it's time to go, even if your heart still wants to stay. Because now you understand that true love does not ask for sacrifice of identity. It doesn't require you to erase yourself. Don't put yourself in shadow. Real love illuminates. And when he is not present, his absence will be the beacon. It will be the unspoken word that explains everything. It will be the silent answer that brings peace. If this video is awakening something inside you, if some part of your soul recognized itself here, then write in the comments, "My absence is my truth." It's a simple phrase, but it carries the power of someone who's tired of remaining silent in the presence of others, and has chosen to speak through silence. Maybe you're experiencing exactly this right now. Maybe your reality today is this place of excessive presence, of silent dedication, of constantly trying to be enough for someone who doesn't care to truly see you. And the worst part is that you've gotten used to it, to this surrender that never returns, to this emotional space that only exists when you're there, filling what the other person didn't even realize was empty. And you keep going. You keep giving, explaining yourself, trying to show that you're someone worthwhile, that you deserve to be kept, chosen, loved. But no one told you that the more you try, the more the other person settles. And the more you mold yourself, the more you lose your own shape. Maybe you're in a relationship right now where everything seems comfortable on the outside, but inside, it's lonely. You wake up and feel alone, even lying next to someone. You talk, but your words don't get through. You offer love, but it finds no home. And you start to wonder if the problem lies within you, if you're being too demanding, too sensitive, too intense. But the truth is, you're only asking for the basics: real presence, emotional connection, sincere reciprocity. And it's not asking too much to want this. Asking too much is to continue where there's nothing and convince yourself there still is. It's to insist on scraps and call it a banquet. It's to accept being treated as an option while you give everything up as a priority. And you feel it. You know it. Deep down, you've already understood. But you still remain. You still wait. You still repeat the cycle. Because hope is a very well-disguised prison. It makes you believe that if you try one more time, maybe it will work, that if you give in a little more, maybe change, that if you shut up, adapt, empty yourself, maybe the other person will finally notice. But what you're forgetting is that your soul wasn't made to live on maybes. Your soul was made to be recognized without having to scream, to be loved without having to diminish yourself, to be welcomed without having to justify yourself. And that's why there comes a moment when you stop, not out of weakness, but out of lucidity, where you choose silence, not because you have nothing more to say, but because everything you had has already been said and ignored. And in that moment, something magical happens. The truth appears. Have you ever noticed this? Have you ever experienced that moment when you decide to walk away, and suddenly, the things you said with words begin to be felt in your absence? When you disappear, the questions begin. Discomfort appears. The absence manifests. And not because you ceased to exist, but because your presence was so alive, so intense, so real, that its absence screams. It's at this point that you discover something simultaneously devastating and liberating. Your presence sustained everything. You were the one carrying that emotional relationship on your shoulders. You were the one who remembered dates, who started conversations, who tried to resolve things, who said, "Let's try." It was you the entire time. And the other person was just there, complacent, receiving, consuming, but never truly committing. When you stop, when you disappear, when you stop insisting, the truth emerges. Because those who truly loved you feel it, and those who only used you as a comfort zone ignore it. And this is the most painful revelation, but also the most necessary. Your absence reveals whether you were love or just convenience. If you were an essential part or just a useful presence. If you were someone who touched the soul or someone who filled the momentary loneliness of those who never had the courage to dive deeper. And maybe right now you're at that exact point, in that moment of transition between staying and leaving, between insisting and letting go, between saying and keeping quiet. It's a difficult place, I know, because it takes courage to leave behind not only the person, but the version of yourself that believed you needed that person to feel whole. But when you take that step, something inside you is reborn. You begin to realize that the love you sought outside was, in fact, the love you needed to return to yourself, that the gaze you so longed for from another was the gaze you needed to direct at your own soul, that the recognition you craved was the one you denied yourself, because when you disappear and realize that nothing changes on the other side, that's when everything changes on the inside. And it's not an easy process, it's a silent mourning, an emotional detachment from everything you designed, built, and sustained alone. But it's also the beginning of something new, the beginning of a reunion with yourself, the beginning of a healing that could only happen after silence, after absence, after the pain you had the courage to face. If you've made it this far, if something in all this resonates within you, then comment below. I was presence, now I am silence. Write this as a reminder, as a turning point, as a conscious choice from someone who's tired of losing themselves to keep others comfortable. Because sometimes the greatest act of self-love is to walk away silently and let the truth speak for you. You don't need to prove anything. You don't need to explain yourself, justify yourself, or bend over backward. You don't need to juggle emotions to be accepted, nor transform yourself into smaller versions of yourself to fit within someone else's boundaries. The pain you carry inside isn't a flaw. It's your soul's cry for release. It's the sign that you've reached your limit. And the limit, as painful as it may seem, is also a portal, a turning point, a sacred place where you either abandon yourself once again or finally choose to embrace yourself. You are too sacred to be treated as an option. And it's not about pride or vanity. It's about spiritual dignity, about recognizing the value of your soul, about realizing that your light is real, even if someone has tried to convince you that you're shadow. And maybe, until now, you've believed this. Maybe you've been programmed to think you're too much, that you feel too much, that you need to hold back. But you don't need to. You're not wrong for wanting depth. You're not wrong for desiring presence, truth, reciprocity. The mistake was accepting less. The mistake was settling for less. But now, something inside you is awakening, a point of awareness, a clarity that arrives after so much shattering, trying to hold on to the pieces of a story that only you carried. And this clarity says you are not what they did to you. You are what you choose to do from now on. Because the past may have been pain, but it doesn't have to be prison. Abandonment may have been the beginning, but it doesn't have to be the end. The silence that once was solitude can now be presence. Rumi said, "Go, let them feel the weight of what they've lost." And that's not revenge. It's spiritual justice. It's allowing absence to fulfill the role your presence could no longer fulfill. Because you tried. You tried to be understood. You tried to show your best. You tried to hold on where there was only wear and tear. But there's a limit to the love that gives itself without return. A moment when weariness is stronger than hope. And in that moment, you choose to go. And leaving in this case isn't weakness, it's strength. A strength born from the depths of the soul. A silent but unshakable strength. The strength of someone who no longer wants to survive emotionally. Of someone who no longer accepts half-life. Of someone who's tired of begging for presence while offering their whole heart. And so, you go. Not with anger, not with pain, but with awareness, with truth, with the peace of someone who knows they've done all they could, with the courage of someone who understands that absence isn't an escape, it's a rebirth. You are reborn. When you choose yourself, when you decide you will no longer diminish yourself to be remembered, when you realize that what you were looking for in someone else was in fact permission to see yourself with your own eyes. Healing begins there, the moment you let go, when you stop forcing what never flowed, when you stop chasing after those who only offered you distance, and above all, when you understand that true love doesn't need to be earned, it acknowledges it. You no longer have to wait to be noticed, because now you notice yourself, now you see yourself, now you hear your soul, and it's telling you it's time. Time to return home, time to honor your pain, time to transform silence into prayer, time to make absence an altar where you deposit everything that has been stifled for too long. And that's where things change, not outside, inside. The world may remain the same, people may not understand, maybe no one notices your absence at first, but you will, still, because you no longer go for others, you go for yourself. Because the reunion that matters most is the reunion with your own soul. Because when you choose yourself, the entire universe begins to reorganize itself. What is yours begins to find its way to you, and what wasn't dissolves into silence. Everything that held you back begins to lose its strength, because you're no longer fighting for acceptance. You're simply being who you've always been, and that, yes, is freedom. The freedom to exist without needing to justify yourself. The freedom to love without begging. The freedom to feel without fear. The freedom to be whole, even alone. Because loneliness no longer scares those who have learned to love themselves in their own company. And you are learning. With every word that echoes within you, with every silent tear that flows as you listen to this video, with every sigh that comes as you acknowledge the pain you were trying to hide, this is the shift in consciousness. Not a sudden shift, but a profound awakening. That moment when you no longer need to hear from others that you're enough, because now you know. And this knowledge changes everything. It changes your posture. It changes your energy. It changes your choices. And most importantly, it changes your vibration. Because those who recognize themselves no longer accept being ignored. Those who love themselves no longer accept being tolerated. Those who heal no longer accept carrying wounds that aren't theirs. So, continue, not to prove anything, but to honor all that you once were, all that you've overcome, all that you've survived. Your absence isn't an escape. It's a rebirth. It's the blossoming that only happens after winter. It's the life that begins when you stop chasing after those who never accompanied you. And if any part of all this spoke to you, write in the comments, "I choose my rebirth." Because sometimes, writing a truth is the first step to living it. If you've made it this far, if you heard every word, felt every silence, and something inside you was touched by this message, then you already know. This wasn't just a video. It was a mirror, a whisper from your soul asking to be heard. Here every silence has a voice, and every absence is treated as the new beginning your soul so deserves. So if this content spoke to you, if at any point you felt seen, welcomed, understood, subscribe to the channel, because this journey doesn't end here. It's just beginning. And I want to walk with you word by word, rebirth by rebirth, And if this experience really touched you, if you felt you needed to hear this today, leave your like. This silent gesture helps this message reach other souls who, like you, are tired of begging for love and ready to find themselves again. The next video appearing on your screen, he is the emotional continuation of that conversation. Click there and continue this dive, because sometimes all the soul needs is one more step towards its own light.